So for those of you who may be new to this series, I know that I see several names that have been here before. But we're here today because words matter. Words change the tone, the frame, and our behavior. Words can change practice too. You know, there's the adage of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's not really true. Words can hurt, but they can also help to heal. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Words Matter series, where we engage in open and authentic discussions about the impact of common terminology used in child serving systems with those who are directly affected by those phrases. Our goal is to illuminate how the terms we use can influence perceptions, approach, and practice, as well as explore alternative language as a means of intentionally shifting how we view and interact with youth, families, and each other. Today, we're going to be exploring the use of the term engagement. Before we begin, please take a moment to consider this. What comes to mind when you think of the term engagement? Joanne's going to put a link in the chat box, and you can click on that, and you can respond to the poll with the thoughts and perceptions that come to mind when you hear this term engagement. So as you'll see, Joanne's put the link in the chat. Just go to menti.com and enter that code that you see there. And we'll start to see that being populated with all of our thoughts. So what comes to mind when you hear the term engagement? Okay, I'm seeing buy-in and involved, absolutely attentive, about being present and mindful, focused. Now, the word cloud will show everyone's responses with the most common in the largest font. So as we look at this word cloud, we can kind of see where we're coming from. And I'm seeing connection is really big, understanding, collaborative, and connection continues to maintain. When we think about engagement, we think about connecting with each other and with services and with resources. And let's give it another, say, 15 or 30 seconds to let everyone have the opportunity to weigh in. Connection's still coming in hot. I see longevity, cooperative. Rose, I see that you're also saying interest. That's good too. Trust. Thank you very much. So let's talk about the use of this term engagement and how it impacts youth and families. It is my pleasure to introduce to you today our two people on our panel, our two discussants. Joining us today are Dylan Nason, a young adult from Pennsylvania, and LaMonica Jeffries, a parent and parent peer support provider from DC, working in Fairfax County, Virginia. Thank you both for being here and for sharing your experiences and perspectives. So, absolutely, we're glad you're here. So we know that engagement is a term that's commonly used in mental health and across the child and adult serving systems. And we know that outcomes are better when families are fully engaged in services for themselves, as well as engaged in informing and evaluating services. We know that providers often seek to engage youth and families in attending services and groups, coming to trainings, completing satisfaction surveys. However, if we really start diving into that, we know that that's more involvement than engagement, and that they might not be the same thing, because we know that involvement is really more of checking a box and offering opportunities for participation, but engagement goes beyond involvement and really talks about a specific goal-directed relationship between the providers and the families, and is a mutual responsibility. And how this implemented really varies depending on the provider, the organization, the system. It can range from being very minimal to being very evolved. And we know that parents and youth often experience different levels of engagement and have different opinions about what engagement is, depending on the providers and the systems, based upon their particular lived experiences in those services and systems. So Dylan, from a young adult perspective, what does engagement mean to you?
Hi, Tracy. Thank you for asking. To me, engagement is a, not a lot about what you said. To me, it is informing and evaluating the system. And in my experience, when I was engaging more, um, to me, that was when I am talking to providers about my experience and I'm trying to have a better experience myself. I'm giving my input and I'm having conversations about it. I'm reaching out to people. Um, if I wasn't engaging, I feel like I would just be receiving the services and, going along my way, no matter how that went. But in my opinion, by me engaging is when I'm trying to understand, like everything that's being done to help me out and if that's everything I need, and having conversations about that. Um, I don't think enough people do that because when I started engaging more with different systems, I started to receive more connections to people because they liked having these conversations. The people that I've talked to who are giving out these services, they want the feedback and they are completely fine with like constructive criticism, with having conversations about, where I am and how everything has been affecting me, the treatment. So to me, that's engagement. Engagement is taking a step further and saying, hey, like I'm also participating in this. I can change it. I can tell you what it's like, and is getting more involved than just utilizing the service and checking off that checklist and going home. Um, that's been my complete experience, and so far I've learned that it's something to continue. Um, because it's progress. To me, when you're engaging, there's more progress. More conversations are being had and more points of views are being expressed, and is really helpful to everyone involved. Um, that's that's what I have to say.
That's great. Thank you, Dylan. What about you, LaMonica? From a parent perspective, what does engagement mean to you?
Yeah. So thank you for the question. To me, engagement is like, so if you think about, okay, so me and somebody's getting married, but first we get engaged, right? It's a mutual relationship. It's a mutual relationship. It's a togetherness. It's I listen to you, you listen to me. You give me this, I share that. So engagement is like, um, to me, whereas though I'm coming into the relationship with children. So you're just not involving me, but you're involving my family. You are you listening to us and you're learning from us and what we need, and we're sharing with you different things that can affect change in the system, and the different things that can affect that can help the system to make changes in the system. So those are the type of things that I think about when it's engaging, not just to invite me somewhere to check off a box, because you need to report these numbers to SAMHSA or some other organization just to pull funding there. But engagement is actually, me being a part of that system that you're learning from and I'm learning from, while at the same time we're both, sharing each other and helping each other along the way. So although, I may receive services from a organization or from an entity, to understand what it is that I'm receiving in terms of service, and to understand and have patience with, relaying information to myself and my family and letting us know broadly what it is that we can expect, and asking us in return, how we feel about that, or, kind of make it person centered. That is what engagement from a family, perspective look like for me.
I love that both of you touched on the mutuality of a relationship, that it is not just a provider providing you, with something, but it is that mutuality. And LaMonica, the way that you framed it was as a mutual commitment of a relationship, and I really appreciated that. I've often seen that some folks have said that it's about having families in the car with you, you know, in a metaphorical car. And one of the things I said, I feel like that's involvement, and engagement is when the family is driving the car. Yeah, and the provider is along and providing information too. And for me, that's kind of the mutuality that you're talking about. So research has shown that youth and parent engagement in mental health can have a significant positive effect on people staying in services and completing programs and experiencing more positive outcomes. And we know that youth and families may feel or be affected differently when there aren't efforts to fully engage them, or when those efforts are not authentic. So what impacts have you seen or maybe experienced, whether you or young people and families that you know of are engaged or not, both for you and in your community or work?
So for me, if it had not been for engagement, I would not have even discovered my purpose in life. If it had not been for engagement, I wouldn't be able to independently assist my family with things that we need, right? We need in terms of me being a mom and providing for my family. So my daughter suffered from mental illnesses, and she is no longer with us today. But in hindsight, because someone engaged me in all that I needed to understand about, you know, my daughter and her life while she was here, although it was short-lived, it put me in this position that I'm in now, which I wholeheartedly accept. It was because of engagement that I was able to step up in my community as a community leader and ANC commissioner, and then go on to run for city council in order for me to be able to affect change in my community. It was engagement, a small amount of engagement, somebody investing in me and not giving me, but showing me how. So you know that little saying, and I might not get this quite right. You teach a man, you give a man a fish and he eats for one day, but you teach him the fish and he can eat for a lifetime. And that's what I feel like engagement is for me. You know, somebody include me, teach me, and then independently they pass that baton, and I'm able to utilize the information that I have and pass that baton forward to somebody else. And that's how you make a community so much better than what it is today. That's how you make a family structure so much better than it is today. That's how you make you so much better than you are today. And that's how you build on relationships through engagement.
And you're spitting facts now. That's awesome. Thank you, LaMonica. Dylan, what would you like to add?
I 100% agree with LaMonica. That was really awesome. Thank you for saying that. And in my experience, I've seen a lot of engagement help out families and help out individuals, and I've seen the opposite too. I've seen lack of engagement create uncomfortable situations, and great things have been like falling apart, and it's really unfortunate. So personally, I believe in trying to inspire people to engage more. I don't see it happening, and when I think back at my experiences, like with less engagement, I'm not receiving the full service that I could be receiving. I have experience with my family in the mental health system, and their lack of engagement now, like where I don't really speak to my family. So I really wish that they had, you know, learned or even tried, expressed interest, you know, went and engaged, but it didn't happen. And now whenever I do surround myself with them, it's unfair for me because I'm feeling a decline to my mental health. So when you're engaging, you are getting that support from the community. You are helping out the community. Like LaMonica said, you're passing on the baton that like can help you out. You're getting the baton that can help you out. You get yourself out and you pass it on to someone else. When I see families who are engaged, not my own, but like I talk to a lot of people, and I see families that are engaged. And when they go through a tough time, because it's always going to happen for the most part, they have an extreme amount of support, and they have an extreme amount of resources that, you know, some people who don't engage would never even think about, that wouldn't even go there. So come along with engagement is, you know, a lot of support and a lot of resources as well.
And I really appreciated how both of you talked about how the positive impact of true engagement extends beyond that of just the one person. Both of you talked about the individual, but the family, and LaMonica, you also talked about even the entire community, because when you feel engaged, then you feel empowered to take action. And then in your story, you talked about being elected was it the ASC chair and then going on to run for city council? So what were the specific ways that you felt like the providers were trying to engage with you? What was successful for you?
The providers, I didn't have much success.
Okay.
I learned after. So you know, things happen for me after, like I said earlier, hindsight. So remember that keyword. Sometimes you don't, you know, you don't get things when you're supposed to. And I believe everything happens for a reason. And that's why I'm not letting my daughter death be in vain. And that's why I'm out here doing the work that I'm doing, because of the simple fact that I had to, you know, it had to be me first before it's you. And engagement was the first engagement that I had, although I was in contact with different providers and receiving different things. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand what I was receiving. And because of my daughter's mental illness diagnosis, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know, like nobody was, everything was just drive-through stuff. And I didn't know that how serious it was, you know. And I don't think I cared to know. I just really was trying to get rid of the behavior, so to speak. And that's just the truth, right? And so all I knew is that I had a full-time job, a bunch of other kids, and I wasn't dealing with this behavior. And not only that, I inherited that type of attitude from my family, who did not deal with those type of behaviors. So if you was a certain way, you was cast out, you know, or the black sheep, you know. And a lot of people that's over 51 on here can understand what I'm saying, because I'm AARP, and I know a lot of you all. Get on and live with that. Be grateful that you made it, because a lot of people not. So be happy about that. But what I'm saying is, provider-wise, that happened after the fact, right?
Gotcha.
I pretty much had to become my own provider by learning peer support. So it was the power of peer support. The training that I had from that, the training that I had from recovery coaching, you know, that that was my engagement, and working with providers in conjunction with providers to be inclusive of all people receiving services. So I kind of got like a flip side to it. You know, I'm on both sides of the table, so to speak. And yeah, that's what it was like for me.
Thank you. Dylan, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, totally. My experience was definitely different. I was probably 21, 22 when I started to engage more. And immediately my engagement was rewarded. My engagement was rewarded with recognition and more opportunities. I remember I started asking if people needed help, and then the people that I was helping out, I was able to ask more questions about the mental health system and services that were being done. So that like got me education, and the education kept on coming. That was like a reward for me. So like to get young adults, to get people to educate or to engage more, I feel like rewarding them with education or rewarding them with recognition or more opportunities to do so. That's what happened to me, and that carried me along, you know, a long time. And that's really it. I did write about it, and that's what I wrote. Giving reassurance too, like that really helps. Like giving reassurance that what you're doing is helping. What you're doing is helping grow, you know, our practice. That's what keeps people engaged. You know, letting people know that they're making a difference.
So it sounds like both of you touched on engagement is a verb. It is not a noun. It is the actions that we take to help people gain the skills, the education, that what they're doing matters and how they can help to improve their own lives, their families' lives, their communities' lives. Is that? And LaMonica, I saw that you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to, we people live in different areas, and my community is disproportionately resourced as opposed to other areas. So, it is culturally different here in Washington, D.C., right? We live in a high crime community. We're not exactly a state, by the way. we're there with no representation, no voice. So like a sitting duck type of representation in Congress. So, it looks a little different here for us. So we're a little slow and behind here in the District of Columbia. And I'm not sure. I believe that plays a part as well in, what it is that you get to do, what you get to have, what you get to receive, and what you get to engage in.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, I've heard you both talk about the different ways that we can describe, encourage, and act to engage youth and families that really consider and respect the particular youth and family experience and perspective. Thinking about that, are there some specific actions or approaches or strategies that you might recommend or encourage that really talk about engagement with youth experiencing mental health challenges and their families that you would recommend? Do you have some specific strategies that you might suggest that folks think about?
I do. And just out of experience, definitely free trainings, giving people education trainings, it makes people feel empowered and then want to do it more. So that definitely.
I wholeheartedly agree with my youth, Dylan. I have a son named Dylan, so, and spelled exactly like that. That's right. Close to my heart. So for me, I agree with him, but it's going to sound a little different. And the reason why I say education as well is because the baton, I passed it to my children. So my 9-year-old is doing Narcan trainings. He's trained over 300 adults, including politicians.
Wow.
My 16-year-old is the only train the trainer Narcan trainer in DC. So I come from a family of people who have, I guess, mental illnesses that never been addressed or spoken about because it was probably taboo. My grandmother was born in 1917, and she is who reared me. So I got all those. I skipped a generation. So I'm kind of like old fashioned, old school. And I had to give up some of those, superstitions and beliefs that she had, because belief systems was hindering me from being, who I needed to be in the world. And it was hindering me from learning and accepting new things in my life. So I had to get rid of all those old sayings and all those belief systems that was handed down to me by my grandmother. But the way that I do it is that I get my family involved. So education is definitely key. And I educate in a way that is prevention as well. And so my young people speak to my two young people. So I set it up like that on purpose, because kids don't want to hear from me. They don't want to hear from us sometimes, us adults. So they want to hear from their peers. So I set it up that way to keep my children educated on mental illness. I keep them educated on substance use. And I also keep them educated in general. So education is key. Dylan, you hit that spot on, and I appreciated that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate what you just said.
I see in the chat that Joy Varney points out that culture plays a big part of engagement as well. Do you have thoughts about that?
Culture plays a big part. Absolutely, it does. Because no matter, because culture is broad. So no matter what you picking out of culture, like I said, my grandmother reared me, and I just believed in all the sayings that she believed in. So I was restrictive as much as she was restrictive. I was rejectful as much as she was rejectful, because I learned by seeing, it's more what a person does and less of what they say. And my grandmother was one to say, do as I say and not as I do. Well, Granny, boo-boo, it does not work like that. And it did not work like that because I adopted the behaviors that I saw as an adult. So it wasn't until I took time with me, I had to be still, be quiet, and go within myself to figure out what is causing me to feel all these feelings. Why am I so depressed? All the time. Like I'm a crybaby. You'll never see me cry because I do this stuff at night or when I'm by myself or when I was doing it. And I had to figure out why I was in so much pain. And so some of those cultural situations did not work for today's time, right? And it didn't work for my life in general. And that is why I was in so much pain. So I had to be a person that lived as open as I can be, which caused me to be as loving as I can be.
Mm-hmm. That makes me think of another addition, which is that to invite people to engage, to let it be known that their input is needed and valued. I feel like across the board on cultures, it would be beneficial for people to hear that their voice is needed to help others like them, to help out the different cultures, and to this is needed, my suggestion would be for the system itself to reach out more, and to press more importance on engagement and press more importance for people to come and do that.
Joy offers a follow-up question. She says, LaMonica and Dylan, who championed you into the world of advocacy? Who was your champion?
So my champion was, it probably was me. My champion was my down times. My champion was me not wanting what I had anymore. And so when you don't want something, you seek out other things. And so what happened was when I was introduced to peer support, it resonated with me because I needed somebody to be intimate with me instead of somebody who could not share their story, such as therapists or whatever. Not ruling them out now because, to each his own. But it just resonated with me because I needed that intimacy. Like I needed to know that you knew, or you know that you understood, or know that it resonated with you, or that it happened to you. So my emotions championed me into this field.
Yeah, I've heard that be the champion you need in the world. Yeah, it sounds like that's what you were. Dylan, what about you?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know if I was just called my computer just kind of skipped.
Oh, yeah, I was just asking, what about you? Did you have a specific champion, or were you your own champion as well?
Much like LaMonica, I was championing myself, not necessarily on purpose. I had gotten to a point where my family borderline abandoned me. I was on my own through the mental health system, and I was being carried along by just being involved, going through the notions and listening to what all the doctors had to tell me. And it had been cycles after cycles of failures and falling back into a pit. So once I had finally hit rock bottom and knew that it was either things are going to end or I'm going to get better, and I chose to get better, that's when I chose to, had that conversation with my doctor, and it was my first point of advocacy. This is how I'm feeling, and I'm not comfortable with it, and I don't want this treatment to continue. And since then is when I did continue advocating, and also since then, more so now that I've had time on and off and have been able to reflect, I value a lot of other people's advocacy and how they go about things, and the genuinity that comes off of it, because it's something that I can grab onto, and it's something that I can fall off of, and that also goes in hand with my engagement. When I'm not feeling as authentic, I don't want to engage that much because I feel like it's not going to benefit, and I feel like it's not really helping. So yeah, I definitely have championed myself into it, but now I value other people's advocacy a lot more than what I had.
I also really appreciate what you said about making sure that we invite people to engage, that we tell them that their voice is important, that what they think and feel and want to do matters, and then that we honor those choices. And if other folks in the chat would like to have any other questions for Dylan and LaMonica, feel free to put that in the chat now. And Dylan, I'm not sure if y'all can see the chat, but there's a lot of kudos and thumbs up and positive comments in there.
Thank you. I just got on that and saw it.
Yeah. So a lot of times when children and families first go in for services, or they first start having that inkling that something isn't right and we need it to be better, what is it that those folks in that very first provider could do to make a difference, to let people know that their voices matter and that they will be respected? Do you have some ideas about, even from what does the lobby look like, or what does it feel like when you call them on the phone? How do you know that your voice is going to be heard, that you'll feel seen, heard, and respected by those folks? Because I think those are some foundational elements of what engagement is built on.
I feel like one of the very first conversations that need to be had between a provider and someone who is receiving services is how they can engage and how they can give feedback and how it's a mutual relationship. I feel like that needs to be one of the first conversations. And I feel like a provider should notice, like, if they're not getting that engagement, to reassure about the mutual relationship and to reassure that they do have a voice that is being heard and listened to.
Thank you. LaMonica, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. So I think the energy of the person on the receiving end matters. Do what's your face look like? How you making me feel when I walk in and ask for help? Here in DC, the motto is let help in. And I wasn't one to ask for help before. And when I needed help and I decided to go and ask for help, I said, okay, well, maybe they're honoring that motto, let help in. And that was created by our Department of Behavioral Health. And it wasn't everywhere that you go is not as welcoming as, it's like you're stigmatized at the door, because a lot of times when you down, it's like you get kicked, when you go for help, you're needy. And so it's not like, you come like this, the people that's receiving you are going to idle you. They like, okay, well, what's the problem today? And it's like, by the time they get to you, they done heard enough, or they done been disrespected by the person before. So I don't know what their day is like, but as a professional, it is important that you are where you need to be if you're going to work in the human service field and assist other people as they may come in and need help.
Yeah, I think that is so important. And I'm seeing that kind of echoed in the chat. Joy says when her son was in services that they saw a derogatory meme of clients on a receptionist's desk and they never went back. So that's one piece. And then Suzanne talked about, kind of an inverse experience about during their first meeting with the neurobehavioral specialist, that it sounds like it almost, and Suzanne, you can come off mute and correct me if I get it wrong, but it sounds like that specialist actually took away some baggage that was on Suzanne's shoulders, that she was somehow at fault. And by saying, you didn't cause this, you wouldn't do this to your child. And that actually, it sounds like, Suzanne, it freed you up a little bit.
Yeah, I was living with just a sense of shame that I wasn't smart enough to figure this out, or I wasn't a good enough mom. You wouldn't believe all the materials I had read. And it was pre-internet where we are today, where you could really dig in. And I had just determined that I was at fault, that this was all my fault. And that I had messed up my child. And that was the first thing this specialist did, was look into my eyes and say, you didn't do this to your kid. You wouldn't do this even if you had the power to do this. And that was life altering for me. That just absolutely peeled back that heavy weighted cloak that I was wearing, that huge pile of shame as a mom that somehow I screwed up.
Thank you for sharing that, Suzanne. I would invite, many years ago, I was helping talk about engagement in juvenile justice agencies. What does family engagement look like for juvenile probation officers? What does that mean and how do we do it? And one of the things that we started doing was just really looking at all of our services from a different lens. What does the signage in our offices say? What do the memes, like Joy was saying, what do the memes on our desks communicate about what we think about children and families? What does the art look like? Is it representative of the people that we're serving? Are all of the signs saying what not to do, instead of what to do? Instead of welcome, we're glad you're here. You're welcome here. Your voice matters here. And so that would be something too, that would be a specific action item that folks could take, is really look at your services, look at your lobby areas, look at your signage, look at your policies, look at the things on desks that folks coming in might see, and really evaluate what are the messages that we're communicating here. Do you have other thoughts, Dylan, LaMonica, that you'd like to share?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Does anyone else in the chat have any questions or observations for LaMonica and Dylan? And thank you. I see, is it say or C? Asset-based messaging engagement is crucial, and how important it is that we lift them up first. All right, we'll give it just another couple of seconds to see if anybody else has any questions. Oh, Bianca, I see your hand is up.
Yes, I just wanted to put in the chat. I put in the chat and I just wanted to bring it up. There's a lot of times that, like Dylan mentioned, his family doesn't want to be engaged, right? So there's going to be a lot of times that maybe someone's not interested in engagement. And as a peer support, I've found that that isn't personal towards me. And I think the best thing that I've learned in my personal experience with resistance is really just not giving up on that person and meeting them where they are. So if somebody would have just, if we could just stay with the families that put up the wall, or the cultural, or the stigma of, I don't want anybody to know we have a problem. I don't want a CPS to be at my house, or I don't want these mental health professionals in my life. If we could just stay with them in that time of resistance, and meeting them where they are, and just checking in with them and saying, you're not alone in this. We want to be with you with this. And we understand your concerns, but just not giving up. That is also part of engagement, because we can't force anybody to the light. We can't force anybody to change. We can't force anybody to understand the stigma or mental health or all the challenges that we have in this world. And eventually they'll come around, but we can't force people to that. So I think it's really important that as service providers and families understand that, people don't want to do this journey alone. And so sometimes when we are shut down and people kind of ignore us, yes, it's true. It's we have to be on their time, and it feels like we're ignored, but we're not. Also, when engagement is happening, from my personal experience, I'm not the only provider on this team that's reaching out. There's 10 other people. So they have to prioritize, the therapist, the in-home service worker, the outpatient therapist, the equine therapy. And then there's this other person who's a peer support that's been through everything you have, but I don't have time for that person. Eventually they do have time, but there's also, we got to get food on the table. I got to go to work. I got to figure out how to just have basic, in the Maslow's hierarchy, basic standard needs. Right now, my need might not be to get on somebody else's level. And so I think that's really important as a service provider, is just eventually people will come around, but it has nothing to do with that personal person, that person that's there that's trying to engage. It might not have anything to do with why they're not engaging. I just wanted to throw that nugget of information of my personal experience that, you know, it took 12 months for a mother that I was working with that her child was in services for her to come to me and after a year and say, you know what, I think I'm the one that needs therapy. After 12 months of working with her. And all along, everybody was like, oh, it's the child, it's the child, it's the child. And so it was beautiful, it was amazing. And I said, you know, and I had been telling her that I was in therapy, but I never once said, you should try this, or this is something you should do. It was, this is what's been working for me, you know, and I would just give her little nuggets of information or education or resources, just really meeting her with her where she was and standing with her. You're not alone. You're not going to be alone. I'm with you. We're on this journey together, but you don't have to do what I do because my journey is my journey. Your journey is your journey. But I'm going to be there with you. And I think that's also really crucial, and peer support and youth support. And that's really what engagement is also about, right? Is also about, and no matter what mental health field or whatever field we're in, even in the school systems, you know, just sitting with the children that might have the behavioral challenges, just being with them. Everybody else is like, that's the problem child. But nobody is just sitting with them, you know?
I am so glad you brought that up, Bianca. You said so many important things in there. One of the things that really struck me is when you said many things, but one, you said, you're not alone. I'll be here. I'm meeting you where you are. But the thing that really hit me was it may take a little while for them to come into the light. And I thought that was so powerful to think about us as light holders, and that we light the way, but we don't force anybody into the light. And I'm really grateful that you spoke up, because I think that was really critical to include. So thank you. LaMonica?
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, that was an important point that Bianca brought up. I wanted to share also that sometimes we don't get the opportunity to work with families for 12 months. So it's important that when you do engage, you engage hard. You give the family what it is that you got. You empty your contents out and you pass it along to the families that you're working with. Because depending on where you are and what type of system you're working in and under, or whatever the case may be, you might get 90 days to work with that family. You might get 30 days to work with that family, depending on funding. So it is important that when you go in strong. You know, you give them all you got. You empty your contents out and prepare that family to be able to navigate systems, to utilize the tools that you share with them, because you don't know what's going to happen. So, you know, we say 12 months, but I'm like, well, where are we working at that we get to work with a family for 12 months with a caseload of 1 million people? Where do we do that? I don't understand. So, you know, although it's important, you know, it looks different everywhere, right? Everybody's work look different. So, you know, Dylan would have his experience and his work and what engagement look like to him and what he can do and how long he can do it. And then there's me, and then there's you. So, you know, and then we talk about therapy. At that point, if a mom is identified needing therapy, I would think the whole family at that point is identified needing therapy, because the mom has been in that child's life for all that time, 12 months. So at that point, I would think it would be a family issue. So I would advocate and ask the family if they think they can benefit from bringing that family together through family therapy, even if the mom do say it's me. You know, so the work looks different for different people, and depending on where you're working, and depending on what you're working with, because you might be working with an under-resourced organization. So, but at the end of the day, you have your information, you have your education, and if nothing else, empty your contents out on the family's table and let that be their dinner.
Anything else? I feel like LaMonica just dropped the mic for everybody right there. Any other final questions for LaMonica or Dylan? Do either of you have any closing points that you'd like to make at this time? Or recommendations?
Well, I just want to recommend that everybody who is already on this call is already great. You're not here for no reason. You're here for a reason. And just continue to go out in the world and be great. Be the change that you're trying to make in the world, because it all starts with you. And I'm speaking from experience. And I saw somebody mention a book on here, and one of the launch pads, besides me just being tired of being tired, because that's what affected change in my life, I did read a book called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. It was profound for me.
Thank you for sharing. Dylan, any final words from you?
I just want to thank everyone for coming out and doing more to learn and engage and, you know, get these extra teachings. And it's a blessing. I really enjoyed everything everyone had to say. I'm learning, and thank you for listening to me. It was really awesome. You know, I'm going to leave this day with more in mind when I'm, you know, talking to people and engaging with others.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your experiences and expertise with us today. But before we go, we're going to return to our initial conversations in the word cloud and thoughts about engagement. Now we're going to think a little bit about the things that we've heard and learned from Dylan and LaMonica and C and Joy and Bianca and Suzanne and all the other folks that were participating, either using their voice or using the chat. We're going to think about all those things. And we're going to have another Menti poll. Joanne's going to put another Menti poll in. And we're going to invite you to respond to this question. What are some things that you are committed to doing within your role to promote youth and family engagement in mental health and elsewhere? You can use the link in the chat box to respond to the Menti poll, and those responses will appear on screen. And so those are I'll put it all on the table. These are the things that we will commit to. And I'm going to say we'll commit to doing it between now and the next Words Matter series, which will be about this time next month. Meet families where they're at and just be there. Let them be the guide. Thank you. Listen. Absolutely. And I think if I were going to respond, I would take that engage hard, because that really hit. And hold the light was the other one that I really got. Invite families to participate. Absolutely. What else can we commit to doing? Jessica's going to commit to speaking up for families' needs in my agency. Thank you, Jessica. Absolutely. Empty your contents. We heard so many powerful things today. The energy matters. Asset-based first. Yes. Active listening, invite people to share and give suggestions on improvements and thoughts. Listen to what families are saying, not what I want to hear. Absolutely. Support people in being their own best advocate. We heard from two very strong champions today who were the champions they were looking for. Meeting people where they are. Not engaging now does not mean they will not eventually engage. Absolutely. And Karen says she's going to do her part in engaging. Oops, it disappeared. Beef up universal behavioral health supports for all kids. Prevention first. You are enough. Always remember that. This is so powerful, and I am so grateful to have had this opportunity to be with you today. And engagement is a process, yeah. Be a light and let them know they are also a light. And that hits. Absolutely. Well, as we start to wind up what our commitments are in the chat, and we're going to save this information too. We want to thank you for joining us today and hope that you join us next month for an exploration of the impact on youth and families of the common terminology used in documentation of services and supports. And as kind of a preview, one of the things that we know is that the way that we document and the words that we use when we document can affect our own perceptions, the perceptions of the families, and the perceptions of others who might be receiving that information. So we're going to unpack that a little bit more next month. We hope that you'll join us then. In closing, we challenge you to be intentional in using the terms that are more supportive and respectful of the youth and family experience and expertise. We thank you for being here. Remember, words matter, and go out and engage hard. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.